I use my phone as a camera too, but it's
All right,
not
guys,
working.
we should be live.
Use something that has really quick latency, not a lot of latency.
For those of you hanging out in the YouTube chat, let me know about the audio. Can you hear me? My audio okay? And what about
I use my
their
phone as a
audio?
camera too, but it's
Hello.
Yeah, Big Pod, say a couple of words so they can check your audio.
Hello, everybody. If you can hear me,
I use my
please
phone as a camera.
click a like button and say we can hear you.
All right.
And this is
What's
me.
that?
This is my. Hey.
All right. Well, I hope everybody is doing okay this morning or afternoon or evening, depending on what part of the world we're in. Obviously, we got some folks from Europe that usually hang out with us. We don't have anybody in the Pacific or Australia this time. I know a lot of times this morning, it's morning for me, which is okay for the European crowd. It kind of sucks for Asia and the Pacific, right? I know. Maybe one day I'll change it up a little bit just to try a different time to better accommodate some other folks.
Yeah. So is it better now, guys?
Yeah.
We got you.
Oh, all right.
Switch to the phone, huh?
Yeah, I had to because DroidCam was not working. DroidCam was.
Zero. I recommend you use OBS, Virtual Cam, and something called Video Ninja.
I don't know how to use OBS, so.
I've never heard of Video Ninja.
It's a peer-to-peer streaming for video for like you add things into OBS through browser, and that's how I do it. And essentially, you just need to plop one browser feed onto your OBS canvas and click one button, and you're done. It's the easiest thing to do.
Okay, I'll learn it. I'll learn how to do it for the next time.
Oh, it's like Jitsi, only it's a little more geared towards working with OBS.
Yeah, kind
I
of.
figured as much.
Yeah.
So you'll have to excuse the background sounds because I'm on the balcony. In my room, it's a bit too dark. So.
No, I mean, I'm streaming from the house today, and I was barely set up for this. For those of you that were a little early, I had trouble getting the audio working there. But thankfully, I was here early instead of getting here right at 10 o'clock and starting the stream and then fiddling with it for 15 minutes on camera.
I must admit, the connection in your house is better.
Yeah, I know the internet is because it's it's my connection and the office that I work at. It's there's a lot of suites there, office suites. There's 9 other offices there. Many of them have multiple computers, multiple employees working in them.
And they're all sharing the internet connection of the building, huh?
Yeah, but usually I'm the only one there when I do these on a Sunday. That's part of the reason for the stream on a Sunday.
Wow.
But I don't know. I don't know why it's still a problem when I'm the only one there on the weekends doing those streams, because the last one was a miss.
You never know. Maybe they're downloading something.
That's what I'm suspecting. One of the guys runs a radio station, and I'm sure he's on the internet, obviously.
Yeah, hogging the internet, uploading and downloading.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what have you guys been up to? Any interesting Linuxy news?
Yes. Zero Linux officially turned 1.1 on May 25th. So,
Yeah, I saw that. Saw the post about that.
Yeah, it's officially 1 year old. Still a baby, but first anniversary, and the release is upon us. And in 3 days, almost 3,000 downloads. So that's positive. And NVIDIA went to shit again. We'll talk about that later.
No.
And people in the YouTube chat are saying that you're only getting the left audio from me.
Yeah.
So I will see.
I'm getting I'm getting stereo in the headset.
You're getting stereo?
I'm getting stereo as well.
It's something on OBS and then.
Okay, let me check OBS.
See, I've only got the one speaker on my phone, so it's not an issue for me.
Oh my goodness.
Let me change the audio in OBS to mono.
Yeah, that's what we all. That's what we do on OBS in church, mono.
And see if you guys get right and left ear now in the YouTube chat. I think that'll probably fix the problem. Again, I normally don't stream here, so OBS, I'm playing with some settings too. I also had to bring my configs. Luckily, I had them stored on Nextcloud, my OBS configs.
Right.
So I can get to them on any computer. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had the scenes and everything here.
So,
Chat on the side.
just a reminder, guys, when you're running like these fancy XLR mixers and all that, turn yourself back up after you turn your mixers down, because you will forget to turn yourself back up when you want to talk in the stream and announce to the world that you have forsaken Gentoo, the world's greatest operating system.
It's a very good tip, though, especially people when you're new to some of this audio stuff. When you're playing with a noise gate, trying to get all the background noise.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I have
It's
to make
especially difficult when you're dealing with fans, or if you're near like a really noisy refrigerator, depending on where you're recording. Noise gates are tricky to get just right.
Yeah. Well, I decided I was going to, compile an update for the QT last night. For some stupid reason, like after that, no windows would open up. Like I couldn't open up any GTK windows or anything like that. I accidentally closed my terminal, so then I couldn't open up a new terminal. I rebooted the computer just to see if maybe it was something caught up in memory. Xorg itself wouldn't launch. And what in the world is going on here?
That's what I would assume is there was an update to Xorg that broke.
Well, I guess. But
you're on Gentoo. We don't have to guess. We know.
This is only so it's just like, do I want to reinstall Gentoo for like the 5th time this week? Because I've been dealing with issues with it for like the past week now. So I said
only 1 week.
Yeah, just about a week now. So anyways, I decided, you know what, we're just gonna go to DistroWatch. We're gonna hit the random button, and of all the Linux distributions it came up with, Open Mandriva, which is what I'm on right now.
Mitsubishi, sorry.
Open Mandriva works. I've tried it out before. It's all right. You want an RPM distro, but why wouldn't you go with something a little? Go with OpenSUSE if you want to go that route.
Well, you see, I have like the world's weirdest issues with OpenSUSE. With like, for some reason, the computer just randomly freezing, which I think it has something to do with the 5.3 kernel. But it does the same thing in Tumbleweed too. So I don't know what's going on with them.
Well, in other non-Gentoo related news, in many cases have been suffering from NVIDIA because the beta driver being pushed as stable, including myself. So thank God for developers like Frogging Family, the TKG. I was able to push the 510 drivers back on my repo so people can use those instead of the shitty 515. I'm talking about people with older cards than Touring. People with Touring cards and above, I wouldn't know. I don't have that. But I'm talking about people like me on Kepler and older. So, I mean, not Kepler. What's it called? The 1080 and 10 series. And
the 10 series. Yeah.
Yeah, we're running Nouveau now. If you install the 515 driver, you'll be running Nouveau. You won't be running the actual driver because 515 includes the open kernel modules that were pushed by NVIDIA, and it's a beta driver. If you go to the NVIDIA official website, 515 is still in beta, and they have a note. Big announcement saying use those drivers at your own risk.
Yes. So, first of all, NVIDIA driver isn't officially yet
Open
The-
source, yeah.
No, not that. Isn't yet stable for consumer graphics card, as far as I know. It's
Yeah,
only stable for the graphics cards of.
They call it a beta.
They call it a
Oh,
beta. It's called open. It's called DKM NVIDIA DKMS beta,
Mhm.
and he merged the DKMS beta into the stable one, and now he's not fixing it. He refuses to fix it. So there's many users. I know people who have multiple $1,000
Hey,
gaming
can we
rigs.
not share our screen?
Multiple $1,000 machines, gaming rigs with 30 series, like 3080 Ti's and 3090s. Too much lag, too much latency, and less games launched than on 510. So thanks to my 510 push to my repos, he was able to launch his games and get back to normal. So I would recommend people with 10 series and older to blacklist 515 DKMS drivers and try to install the 510 using the Frogging family script. That's what I
One thing I wanted to mention too. We had the news, of course, about NVIDIA open sourcing some stuff, and people were excited about it. But understand also that stuff is going to be for what they're doing now and going forward. They're not going like these older cards.
No.
You're not getting open source drivers for those things.
No,
Just
we're not getting
forget
any
about that.
drivers. We're getting the Nouveau drivers. So if you install the latest DKMS drivers or the latest official drivers, they are set to 515. If you are running the 10 series, you'll be running Nouveau. You won't be running the actual driver.
We had the same problem too when AMD first open sourced everything. A lot of the older AMD cards, we never had drivers for on those. I'm talking about the really old stuff now.
You have the ATI, XF86 video ATI. Those are for older generation cards. So there's still that. At least we get those with AMD and ATI. We don't get anything with NVIDIA. Users have to fork the NVIDIA drivers in order to get back to normalcy, any type of normalcy.
Yeah. And in the chat, Lifeless Web User says the older cards don't matter anyway. That's not true. I mean, a lot of people are on ancient hardware. You would be surprised how many people are still running video cards that are 15 years old.
As a distro maintainer, I will just set the record straight. There's a higher number of people who have ancient hardware than there are people with normal hardware or more recent hardware. So if you have a 3060 or a 3070, don't think that everybody else is as lucky as you are. Consider yourself one of the lucky people.
And honestly,
yes, that's
Linux, the kernel has always been better at supporting older hardware than newer hardware. A lot of times when something first comes out, you need to wait a little bit before
like the Intel drivers, video drivers, for example. The Mesa provides better support for Intel video cards than the actual Intel driver.
Right.
So that's why I didn't include it on this release, because Mesa is better in general, and they're doing a lot of good work, and they have pushed over 7 updates in the past few months.
If we had a good question in the chat, is even if the cards are supported, will we be forced to use open source? I'm assuming you could still use a proprietary driver.
Yes.
Kind of like AMD has a proprietary driver, but you know.
Let's first go through what is actually happening with NVIDIA. First of all, they are just open sourcing kernel modules.
Not the actual drivers, yeah.
No, those are the actual drivers for the card. Problem is that each connection between those two is actually built out of multiple components. One of them is kernel side, one of them is user side. And user side components, that is what actually does the CUDA, does your NVENC.
Right.
Those things
that's what people want to know
is
will NVENC be open source? That's the question everybody wants to end. It's like
that's not currently open source, because what they were going for is actually you're not the prime target for the open sourcing. Prime targets for open sourcing are servers, or more specifically workstation cards. Where it be the laptops that are used by those who work at companies. So you have laptops with NVIDIA cards. Those servers of Teslas and Quadros, workstations. That's what were the main targets of this open sourcing.
Yeah.
Yes, and why do servers want an open source driver? Because
Easy install, simple as that.
the easy install and the enterprise security practices are gravitating towards enabling secure boot, which using the proprietary NVIDIA driver, you cannot have a assigned
You
secure
can
boot
do.
unless you're
Yes.
using Windows.
Yes,
No,
correct.
you can do on Linux. I did it on Linux many times. It's not actually that
But-
hard. You just need to know a couple of tricks.
Having these things as part of the kernel is just safer. You don't
Yes.
want to go get third-party drivers from.
Yeah,
Not
but
on a server.
for the end users, that's gonna the scenario of the 470XX and the 510 drivers is gonna repeat itself. That's what's gonna happen. So
Probably.
somebody will have to supply the 510XX drivers at some point, whereas the newer ones will be just for touring cars, 20 series and upwards, and 10 series having to run to the AUR to install the drivers maintained by someone on there. So unfortunately, we cannot run away from that. It's just a matter of time before it happens, because the 510, that friend of mine who sold the multi-$1,000 gaming rig, he had to revert to AMD because that issue of because that was a client's computer. He sold it to someone, and that person was updated the driver to the latest, which was 515 at the time. It caused all sorts of issues. They had to go back to NVIDIA. Everything was beautiful ever since. But unfortunately, the situation is repeating itself. What can we do? We can just shut up and put up with it.
One thing that, since we're talking about NVIDIA, that open sourcing the driver, you know the whole speculation. What was the cause for the open sourcing? Where it was Steam Deck, where it was that.
Oh
Blah, blah.
yeah,
That's
obviously it was.
one of the most horrible and misinformed discussions ever been there, because people actually thought that this decision came out in last few months, instead of when it in reality came, probably decision came out 2-3 years, and this was the time in the lead up time to actually making it happen was probably 2-3 years at minimum.
Yeah, I doubt the Steam Deck had anything to do with that decision.
No.
I doubt anything happening in the last few months did. Anything. This is probably a decision that was done 3 years ago at some meeting, and then slowly they cleaned up the code. Lawyers signed on everything, and got to the
They
point
cleaned up the code. They had to get all the crazy stuff out of it
all
that
the
we
curse
couldn't see.
words. Let's be clear. A lot of the cleanup was curse words. That's standard thing.
As far as the decision for pushing the beta drivers as stable, we still don't understand that. It's a questionable decision by the maintainer. I don't get it, because if you look closer on the AUR, you will find another package called Open DKMS, which has the exact same driver. So it's a little bit confusing. Now you have NVIDIA DKMS and NVIDIA Open DKMS, which are the exact same version, and the NVIDIA Beta DKMS also is the same version. So three identical versions. That is confusing and that is questionable. I think what that maintainer is doing is going to cause is give NVIDIA even more bad reputation by doing what he did, and he refuses to roll back. So distro maintainers have to maintain their own versions of the 510 driver from here on in, I guess.
That's why I run Ubuntu. No such problems.
A lot of distributions are still. I'm running also on a separate drive, Nobara, the Fedora Spin, the gaming Fedora Spin by Glorious Eggroll, and they still on the very first 510. So they didn't upgrade and everything. So everything is okay there. But on Arch, unfortunately, if you want to run the latest, if you have an older card,
510 kernel on Arch. It's
Yeah,
literally
you
called
can,
Linux
but-
5-10.
no, not the kernel. I'm not talking about the kernel. I'm talking about the driver.
Yeah.
the proprietary driver. It's
Yeah, but if you're maintaining a distro like he is, I mean, you're going to have people on the latest kernel.
on the latest kernel 5.18. And if I put in Calamares where they selected drivers, if I put NVIDIA DKMS, they're going to end up with a 5.15 driver. So I had to find a way to build, package up, and host the 5.10 drivers.
You don't want to just put on your homepage, "Oh, roll back to the 5.10 kernel." That's what the Arch Linux guys do. Zero Linux is not lazy like that. Like the Arch guys just post something on the homepage, roll back a package, it'll be fine.
Yeah, no, I just provide them. I built them and post them on my repo, and then provide them in Calamares. They can select them during the install. That way, they will help the pipe. And plus, those are the TKG patched versions, so they're even better than the official ones.
Let me answer a couple of questions here in the chat. Andrew was asking me, do I have any plans on continuing GIMP lessons? Not at the moment, but don't count it out. And I had a super chat from Tom. He said, wanted to thank you for your content. Really helped me get into Linux. I can't wait to see where the rabbit hole leads. Appreciate that, Tom.
Yeah, right. It is a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Look at me now. I have my own distro, and I went down the rabbit hole, and I dug another rabbit hole.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I keep getting into new things. Yeah. Every day I find something new that I didn't know about the day before.
Yeah, but so maintaining a
and
distro...
somebody was asking me about my home computer. Am I liking the computer here? Yes, it does have an NVIDIA card.
What card does it have?
I have a 3060.
So similar to
Lucky
me.
one. Lucky guys, the people who can get their hands on a 30 series are very
I have had some issues with updating. Obviously, I'm running Arco here, Arch-based distribution, and sometimes I do an update and reboot and get a black screen because of those NVIDIA drivers.
Yeah, and well, at least we're knowledgeable enough to figure out a way.
Oh, I know immediately what the problem is. I can drop to a TTY and roll the driver back or whatever.
The problem is not everyone is knowledgeable and wants to do that.
But I'm running a 3070 and I've never had that issue with Arco. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I just can't manage to break it. The only thing that doesn't work is basically hibernation.
Matter of fact, for those that are new to Linux that are hanging out in the chat, this will come up at some point in your Linux career. 9 times out of 10, when you reboot and get a black screen, probably the video driver. Probably the video driver.
Yeah.
For new Linux users, don't install Arch if you have a video card. Install Ubuntu. You just one click and it sorts itself out completely.
Or Fedora. Card.
Fedora doesn't do that. Fedora's I don't recommend Fedora to anyone, especially with an NVIDIA card, because Fedora you need to actually know stuff about NVIDIA cards to actually get them working.
Okay, Big Pod. Okay, Big Pod. I will specify Nobara, not Fedora, plain Fedora.
Well, if you guys want a Linux distribution that's going to support your NVIDIA card forever,
Debian stable.
Exactly, Debian stable.
Just run it for the next 10 years.
I'm going to tell you right now why you shouldn't. It's insecure.
Well, we already knew that one.
Right now, I'm a big on security is one part of my job, and I have been looking at different distros, how they're in their most plain form, so server form.
Hundreds of millions of servers around the world run Debian stable.
Yes.
How are you going to say it's insecure?
But it's still insecure because it is.
Okay, so what now? You're recommending they run something like Arch?
No, they should run Ubuntu server, because Ubuntu server, or they can go with something like
Ubuntu is based on Debian stable.
Yes, but they have people who actually fix security issues in a quick and fast fashion. For example,
shots fired at the Debian team.
No, it's not shots fired. It's a community project. You cannot get everything done as quickly as necessary. Ubuntu is managed by a company. They have a team specially for that. It's not such far. I'm not saying it is how it is. Community projects will never have the same parity as a company-supported project. It's the fact of the reality.
All right, Hibdad, go ahead.
Okay. As you know, I've been down the Zorg rabbit hole pretty deep, and I was using LMD5, and I kept having troubles, and that's based on the Debian stable kernel, and I was like, well, wait a minute, let's just go ahead and switch to Ubuntu because it has the latest kernel, and I switched to it, and I'm using Mate. And I borked my system a little bit here and there, but I did find out that on the NVIDIA card, I'm running the 510, and it's running pretty stable. And it's still, just like everybody else said, the issue is not really the driver itself. It's when it goes into sleep mode, you come back and you have to reset your settings, especially on the pipeline force. And that's the only issue I have now. And my biggest issue was I didn't have my TVs that I use for my screens set so they did just scan. And that was the issue with the sizing, to where I'd lose my top and bottom and my sides. And so right now at this time, I've got fairly stable, except for the sleep mode. And that's the only...
Yeah, the 510 driver is still stable because it's the official stable driver. But as soon as you go to 515, a lot of people are having issues with new and old cards. But the issues differ between older cards and newer cards.
Ironically, there used to be issues with 510 driver as well.
I don't have a lot of issues, except none of my Steam games launch.
Well,
but other than that,
the new cards had issues with 510 drivers for quite a while.
Yeah, the 515. To be honest, the 515 fixed some of those issues, but they introduced other issues, like a lot of lag and performance hit.
I don't have a problem with 510.
No, 510 are good, but 515, like for example, I have users who are running KDE with.
It's not a stable driver, so you shouldn't use it.
Yeah, that's the problem. So when he went to 515 and he was using Wallpaper Engine plugin for KDE, it was smooth on 510, on 515, 15 frames per second, even if it's set at 60 FPS.
I don't even think Wallpaper Engine's even supported anymore on Linux, is it?
It is. It's still being maintained. Latest commit was 2 days ago.
Brandon, you wanted to say something? Brandon?
Yeah, to Hibdad, regarding your scaling problem, I think you're like using one of those HD TVs. I'll tell you, if you're using Xorg, XR&R is your friend. If you're using Wayland, then you
should start using X.
Yeah, I mean, and then you got GNOME desktop environment wants you to use X Wayland. It's like, what the hell is X Wayland? Come on, make up your mind.
X Wayland is essentially trying to emulate X for certain Windows because, well, people realize that Wayland will never be useful.
And just because GNOME defaults to Wayland doesn't mean you have to use Wayland with it. You can select
X. It has an option as well.
Good thing I removed Wayland completely from Zero Linux. Wayland doesn't exist in Zero Linux anymore.
I'm on Wayland right now. It's
just
fine.
blacklisted.
Why, Josh? Why?
It's working.
Yeah,
Michael,
for 5 minutes at a time.
Michael's got something to say here.
Yes, sir. I was just wanting to put in that I am running an M4000 on my workstation, and I've had no issues with the drivers so far. I guess that's a new card, though.
M4000, what's that?
It's a
Quadro. Which generation would that be? That would be.
It's a pretty recent Quadro.
I think it's like last gen, isn't it?
It's Touring.
Right.
It's based on Touring. TU series.
Yeah, but honestly though, like if we want like the world's most rock solid video drivers on Linux, it's not NVIDIA. It's not even AMD by that regard either. It's actually the Intel driver. That's the one you want if you want like driver stability.
Yeah, you want
What do
driver
you-
stability? Yeah, really? It's Mesa, dude.
Okay,
It's
yeah.
Mesa.
Michael, what are you using that Quadro for?
Well, I do some
Wow,
3D
it's just
rendering, so it's like Blender and things
Blender?
like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I got it.
Yeah, because
That's
that's an
pretty
expensive
old
card.
That's
Well,
pretty
yeah,
old card.
Came with my used workstation that I
Oh,
bought
yeah.
for under 500, so I thought it was
Yeah.
a good deal.
Oh yeah, if
Makes
you got the
sense.
card with
It's
that,
might
yeah,
as
man,
well.
that was a great deal.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
that card is equivalent of the Maxwell, so that's 9 gen.
900
NVIDIA
series. So
900
so
series,
Maxwell.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
Maxwell.
count
Maxwell.
myself very lucky. I count myself so lucky on that.
Yeah, well,
you
if
gotta-
it's Maxwell, anything you do, as long as you stick to the 510 drivers, you should be okay.
Yep.
You should be fine. But it's just the questionable decision of the maintainer on Arch. That's the thing that's getting everybody up in arms. Everybody's running after him with pitchforks because there's a bug report on Arch, and he's not replying. So
Sounds like
Yeah.
what's going on with good old System D's maintainer creator. Yeah, everybody's
Oh,
still
Renard Pottering.
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, 2 updates in the past month, in the past 2 weeks, 2 updates, and now he's forcing us as maintainers, as distro maintainers, he's forcing us to use a new method of listing the boot system deboot when you boot the ISO.
Yeah.
So now instead of option 1 becomes option 2, and option 2 becomes option 1. So we have to add a new line called ID. And then we have to put it in alphabetical order. So I had to put F for free, and then for the N for the no mode set. So in order for the series,
For the love of Chrome.
it's weird.
I just don't care. Honestly, why would you use system deboot?
Well, for booting
Yeah.
the booting the ISO, this is what I'm used to. So
It makes your installer image smaller by like 50 megabytes.
Yeah, one of the things with System D is it does so much stuff, which I guess is kind of cool. But people are so used to the old tools. Like I'm going to use cron jobs. I'm never going to use System D timers. System D timers may be great, but I'm just going to use what I've always used. And so I think they do waste a lot of time developing these other tools that
Yeah.
are not really needed because we've already had that problem solved.
like I know what you're talking about. Like for example, the trim timer, for example.
Right.
Yeah, you have to set that manually, and
Yeah.
yeah. Well, good thing I learned how to do that and where the config file is to include on the ISO, so it's enabled by default for everyone on Zero Linux.
You know, one thing, you have options because, you know, you could always just rebase off of Artix and just use OpenRC instead of Systemd. Josh would love that because he loves OpenRC.
I actually do.
No, don't do that. If you like your customer, then you would want to use systemd.
Yeah,
I like your customers.
your latest video talk, your latest phone made video. That you mentioned the Systemd haters.
Oh, I love trolling that crowd, and it's not so much the YouTube crowd. I mean, you got some people in the comments that act crazy, but it's it's mainly for the crowd on Odyssey because that group really hates Systemd.
So there's a website that these Systemd haters really like to bring up every now and then. It's like nosystemd.org or something like that.
Yeah.
Apparently, they don't read their own website because a lot of the issues that they mention in that website itself have actually been fixed in Systemd.
Yeah, we covered that on the last stream. That website is way out of date. And it's the same thing with the. There's one on Flatpak about the problems with Flatpak, and half the stuff on that is stuff that either is just flat out wrong or it's been fixed,
or it's intentionally like that.
Yeah. I must admit, I was a Flatpak Snap app image hater, but I just found out that the OBS Flatpak is better than any other package you can get out there. And when I used
well, it's the one that's officially supported, so typically you want to go with the
Ubuntu PPA too.
Technically not officially supported. by one member of the team because he wanted to make it because he works for Red Hat.
Well,
Let's be honest.
Well,
Well,
let's be for real. Anybody packaging for Flatpak usually is working for Red Hat.
Yes.
But that's
Yeah.
okay. I mean,
Same
it
as
doesn't
any
matter
person
why
who
they did
works
it. They did it.
on Gnome and Wayland.
it's
And
the
Pulsefire, for that matter.
it's the end result that matters. But there's a package I really want on Arch right now. I'm dying to figure out how to do it. But it's the Nobara version of OBS. It includes all the plugins imaginable in one pack. Like it includes Steam FX. It includes game capture. It's got all sorts of
what you do
plugins.
is
Something
because-
like that exists in
Okay.
Ubuntu. It's called Ubuntu Fully Loaded by Martin Wimpress.
Well, what you do is if you want like an OBS build with like all these nifty features, you can unpack a snap package.
Yeah, and a Flatpak.
You can unpack a flat pack too. So you can
but
you can
this
open
is
these up and you can look at the source code and see what they did.
Yeah,
well,
they-
it's an RPM. The one
You can
on
unpack an
Nobara-
RPM.
Open RPM. It's not that hard. It's seriously easy.
Yeah, they're all just
it's a
archives.
tar archive at the end of the day.
Yeah, they're all just archives.
Yeah, I know.
Snap
The
is
thing,
a squash file, but it's same shit.
I know. I can extract that, but the thing I want is to package it up for Arch and host it on my repo.
Well, if you unpack the RPM, then you have binaries that you can make a package build for Arch for.
Yeah.
What you could do, and
That's
just
actually like
people-
how half the AUR works. Is it
Exactly.
unpacks deb files?
Right. Well, no, another thing the AUR does, I know I personally wouldn't recommend this, but people do it, is you can actually build an AUR package and just have it install a snap or a Flatpak or an app image.
Yeah.
People do that.
Yeah. I wanna hunt for a package build that has an RPM in it, so I study it, see how he does things to make my own, because that's an amazing bundle.
I think
OBS.
the alien build in AUR
Yes.
is packaged as an RPM.
Okay, I'll check it out because it's an awesome bundle, OBS bundle.
Yeah, which for you Debian people that don't know what Alien is a tool that you can use to convert deb files into RPM packages.
Yes.
Like deb trap,
Debpack.
convert
Yeah,
Debian to.
There's one available for Arch, I believe, that'll convert a deb package to.
Debpack.
Yeah, the deb this deb pack, whatever.
Debpack.
DebTap. Yeah, DebTap does from the deb to Arch.
Yeah.
I use that, but I need one for RPMs so I can convert that package. It's available on the Copper Nobara repository. So.
And
And
I saw
Copper-
a comment about this, by the way. I have this flash drive right here. This boots a special Arch Linux image. I call it yet another Arch Linux distribution. It boots up into the Calamares installer and installs Arch Linux for you. But it does more than just that. It installs DTOS for you as well. I'm still trialing it, so it's not available quite yet. But
Yeah,
it's
I still
working
got
on it.
work to do.
No, but yesterday I booted into Windows and installed Arch WSL. It's by a user on GitHub. It's running the 5.10 kernel, so I'm like, okay, that's a pretty old kernel. How to update to the latest? Now I'm researching how to update to 5.18 on that. Apparently, it has to be provided by Microsoft because.
Yes. No. Actually, you can build it yourself.
You can compile a kernel.
I've done that a million times.
On WSL?
Yes.
How?
Build the kernel and there is a file
From AUR? We can build from the AUR, for
No,
example?
you have to build it on. I need to remember. It's been a while since I had to do it because I got the better thing.
That
And-
just seems wrong.
and-
Compiling a Linux kernel on Microsoft Windows.
Yeah.
I've done it.
Let me see. I have an article for that.
I wanted to have fun on Windows a little bit yesterday because I was bored. So, but anyway, it doesn't even run System D. This Arch WSL doesn't even run System D.
Doesn't need it. You can run it, but doesn't need it.
Yeah, of course, because it's not a desktop environment. Why would it need it?
It has its own
Hey,
init system.
You're also trying to keep things small or small as possible. System D is such a huge program.
Yeah.
That's that video that I made yesterday or whatever, where I talked about all those distributions that don't use systemd, and several of them are things like Tiny Core and Puppy and things like that. Of course, they're not going to use systemd because systemd would be bigger than the entire image is already for those distributions, right? It would be, a massive program to.
In chat for GTA, I posted a link to an article by someone how to build a kernel for
WSL. Yeah, yesterday when I was messing with WSL, also I noticed it was only 100 megabytes, so that was small.
Yeah,
but it's not. It's cool to see that there's a Arch WSL, not only Debian based stuff.
There is Fedora one.
There's Fedora. There's OpenSUSE
one.
There's a Gentoo build
Ubuntu.
too.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Well, of course.
But I just went to Windows yesterday because I really got.
Okay, so let me hold you guys up here for a second. The problem with Gentoo in WSL is that the Windows Memory Manager fucking sucks, and it will ruin your life.
Yeah.
The problem with Gentoo and WSL is people are not going to get that full-on Xorg is broken experience in WSL the way they would on proper Gentoo.
Well,
it's not the Gentoo is broken experience.
The only reason I was on Windows yesterday because I got frustrated with games not launching on Linux from Steam. I went to Windows, launched my game, had some fun, and then went back to Linux. I can't get a single game. I cannot get a single game to launch from Steam. Not a single one. I tried 35 different versions of Proton. None of them work.
Wow.
Oh, they work for me, but I
Work for me
on Ubuntu.
No, it's a me issue. It's a me issue. I just don't know what package I'm missing.
Yeah, that's a weird one. That's going to be something specific to you.
Yeah, I know, but I need to figure it out. But I cannot be bothered right now.
I think the Arch Wiki literally has a link on it that says unable to launch games from Steam.
I know. I went there.
You can also just run Steam from a terminal, and it tells you why games aren't launching.
Yes,
I did that. Remember, I'm a maintainer. I did all these troubleshooting steps. None of them worked.
So I opened the terminal.
Actually, yesterday I installed Windows on my system as well. But that
God.
I've got like pages of the Arch Wiki right here. Do you want me to find the one for fixing Steam games?
No, I
let's see.
On paper. Okay, on paper.
Yes, on paper.
I have 3 games I can't run on Linux because they have those shitty anti-cheats. And they aren't Steam games for that matter anyway, so I had to install Windows to play them. And I can't wait.
That's understandable.
End of the year comes another game that I can't wait to play, and I need.
You have to keep that Windows installation around anyway. Now that you're working at Microsoft,
I just found a paper that picture Steam games. By the way, it said uninstall Linux, install Microsoft Windows.
Yeah, expected that.
Oh,
Also, I'm not
just so
working on
wrong.
Microsoft.
No, I know that.
AI. Please check us out if you use Docker.
For those that weren't around a couple of months back when Big Pod was looking for a job, we kept teasing him. It's going to be a job at Microsoft. Or somebody that does rockets. I mean,
Hipdad, hit us.
Dreams.
Yeah, that issue you were having, I went and had this weird issue where I installed, I play World of Warcraft and I use Crossover. I have to pay for it, but I like the program and everything. And then I went and bought Diablo 2 Reforged, and it would not play through Crossover. So I went and added it through Steam and did the Proton thing, and it launched. It uses Crossover to launch, but Steam makes it work.
Cool.
So I don't know what that is, but it works.
Yeah,
No
sometimes
shame
Steam
in paying for
can help.
Crossover.
But in my case,
Proton works better.
my issue is I'm missing a library somewhere, a Vulkan library, because the games that I'm trying to launch are all based on Vulkan, most of them. I cannot launch like Doom Eternal, for example. I used to be able to launch it no problem, but because I recently created a meta package for Steam for each GPU. One meta package for Steam for Intel, Steam AMD, and Steam NVIDIA. So I must be missing a package. I don't know which one, but I'll figure it out at some point. I'll figure it out. It's not. It's just a matter.
You could
of
ask
time.
the friendly folks on the Arch forums. They'd probably give you.
They definitely know.
Or you could get Linux FX.
I know people.
You just sank the battleship.
Yeah, we were going to get to that topic here in a minute because I've had some interesting times here in the last week talking about Linux FX, and some of the folks from Linux FX reached back out to me to.
Oh, they did tell you that you were lying?
No. That I'm great. I'm an awesome person. They love what I do.
Oh, they called me a fucking troll because I got into their database and I changed a couple variables for them, and then I told them about it in a bug report.
Wait a minute.
Apparently, I'm not the problem.
You're a hacker.
Apparently,
I apparently wasn't the only one that did this.
Joshua is
the person that was the problem, Josh, was the guy that wrote the article about it. He was the problem. But they changed the database, like the username and password. Now the name of the website is kernel.eu with an A. Now the username is Kernel is a lamer or something. Like they changed the password is Kernel is dumb or something.
And they pushed an update where all those passwords are stored on your system, I bet.
Yeah. And they said, they said you got to understand the project is new. We didn't expect that a hardcore hacker was going to target us like that. I'm like, a hardcore hacker? You had your passwords on the internet. On the internet.
Plain for eyes to see. Plain for people to see.
You could get it with the curl command. Okay, when I can curl a website and get your password.
Let me explain something. What they did wrong. Essentially, they should have used an intermediary layer for password to not be seen and not be uploaded onto your system for some reason. Who does
the problem? The first time around, the problem was that stuff was available right there on the ISO. The second time around is they just put it on the internet.
Who does that? Who's that bad at internet?
Well, and I was being dead serious, having looked at those articles and looked at some of the code on that Linux FX register app. The fact that it's written in Visual Basic. I don't think these are people that really know anything about Linux. They really look like they were Windows users. Let's do something with this Linux thing, see if we can make some money with it, because they didn't know how sudo worked. Well, the problem with this hacker is he used this super hacker command called sudo. Let's disable sudo. Sudo's the problem. No, that's not the way.
Sudo completely, huh?
No.
I guess sudo is just too OP. Let's remove it. Well, we're going to leave PK exec there, which is exactly the same.
Well,
I'm gonna.
PK exec does things a little bit differently, but yeah, it's practically.
I mean, it gives you super user privileges. Yeah.
Let's be clear. First of all, they did something terribly wrong. But second, Linux doesn't mean secure just by being open source. So the fact that they were proprietary doesn't mean they were less secure than being if they were open source. It would be actually less secure that way because it was horrible design.
Now let me correct something in the chat. Somebody in the chat was saying nobody deserves to be hacked. These guys weren't hacked. That's the problem. They just put this out there in the public themselves. Nobody did this to them. So they had all this information there for anybody to find.
They should have used an API to have codes on that.
Technically, I did hack them using the information that they provided for me.
Technically, it's still hacking.
And then I immediately told them,
because it is unauthorized access to someone's computer system, which is officially hacking.
Well, if you did like an injection, but just reading the database, I mean, anybody.
Well, I changed
an 8-year-old. They knew nothing about computers.
And then I rolled it back. Because apparently these guys don't even know how to maintain a database.
Yeah.
If they're using MySQL database,
They
were.
oh my god.
They're
It's,
using MySQL.
I used to
God
work
damn.
around developers who used to work on MySQL. They said MySQL is one of the most easy to compromise database softwares
Absolutely.
around.
Yes,
Absolutely.
it is.
What made the whole Linux FX thing even more embarrassing for these people is their website said they had more than 1 million users worldwide, and then you get into the database, and it has 21,000 rows of data.
Well,
Well, 21,000, let's round that up to 1 million. It's a round number.
That's basic
yeah,
101 of exaggerating in marketing, as in software businesses. That's like you can't have so many companies that could be customers as
what did these
displayed in
guys
marketing.
expect? They were calling their distribution Linux. They were using a Linux operating system.
The problem is,
and then they were trying to do their best to emulate Windows to the point where it's just like
they used to be called Windows FX. They changed the name because obviously they were going to get sued into the ground.
they can still get sued. Have you seen that?
But so they changed it to Linux FX. Linux is trademarked too. You can't use Linux.
Yes.
I mean, you can't.
And something
there's a lot of legal problems with that.
Something I learned while I was reading comments about this whole thing. Somebody on DT's video commented that maybe we should stop. We should remove them from the list of Linux distros. And
we should vote them off the island. Right?
And
it's
I
like Survivor. You just
what
get voted
does
off
it
the
mean
island.
to be a Linux distro? And it's essentially you're using a Linux kernel, which means by all logic, Android is a Linux distro. And to be even more specific, a person who works for Linux Foundation actually said that by all parameters set by Linux Foundation, what is a Linux distro? Android is a Linux distro.
Yeah,
it's true.
Matter of fact, that's what the Linux kernel team spends most of their time working on, is making that thing work with Android, because let's be for real, it's the most popular operating system on the planet. I mean, it just is.
It's the most popular consumer operating system.
Well, yeah. If we're talking about
but in terms
human
of
beings.
quantity as well,
right? Yeah, but I mean, you've got billions of Android devices out there.
Yeah,
literally billions.
Mm.
Hundreds of millions of new devices activated each month.
Oh my!
And that many deactivated each month.
Yeah, because people trading them in. So yeah,
it's still a lot of devices, though. Like way too many.
That's
in
why
my personal opinion.
When you hear Linus Torvalds talking about things in the Linux kernel, 80% of the stuff he's talking about is Android specific stuff. Is because that's where the money is. I mean, Google is a platinum sponsor for the Linux kernel, and they have developers working on the kernel. Google's paying people to commit to the kernel just for Android.
Syed, Apple is not a Linux distribution. If anything, they were a bit closer to like the GNU project, but then they dropped GNU.
Apple macOS is what is called
Unix.
It's BSD. It's BSD.
Yeah, BSD.
It's BSD, but it's not. It's an old fork of FreeBSD. It's nothing like modern FreeBSD.
Darwin, which they are built on top of it.
Because a lot of people think like, well, macOS is just FreeBSD. It's nothing like FreeBSD. They diverged so long ago. It's not even. They're not even the same operating system anymore.
I want to say
and iOS and iPadOS are basically that. Just your macOS a bit more upgraded to fit onto a phone and a tablet, and are horrible because of that.
I thought the kernel was FreeBSD version 3, if I remember right, on the original, at least the original OS 10.
Possibly.
I'm not sure on the kernel version.
Oh boy.
The only thing that, like when you use modern Mac OS, it kind of is a Unix-like operating system. You can get a shell. I mean, you can open a terminal, you can get a bash shell, or they're using ZSH by default now, but you can still get bash. They don't like shipping bash by default anymore.
Yeah.
Bash is GPL software.
They used to ship 10-year-old bash on their system.
Oh shit, guys! I blue screened.
Yeah.
Which, Fun fact, by the way, for you guys that are still using GNOME, GNOME actually does have a blue screen of death.
Yes, they do.
Really?
Yes, it
So,
exists.
of sorts. Let's put it.
Does Ubuntu still have the purple screen of death? I know they had one at one time, didn't they?
I don't know.
Didn't they have a little a screen like that, like an error screen or something? Obviously, you didn't get it nearly as much as the blue screen that Windows gives you, because
That you don't get a lot either.
maybe not now, but back in the day, it was a daily occurrence.
Well, you know, in this brief adventure of Linux distributions, I did at one point install Microsoft Windows, which blue screen during the installation.
What the hell do you have with your hardware?
Turns out I had a bad memory stick.
That makes sense.
That'll do it.
It's fucking hot.
Yeah,
Somebody
just,
in the chat was saying that there's a guy trolling saying that Windows is a Linux distro. Well, I mean, if you have WSL,
You can think
counts.
about it that way.
you can. I mean, you can think of a lot of things as being a Linux distro.
Technically,
Like we talked about Android, Chrome OS. I mean, it's
those
a
two are
Linux
definitely
distribution.
Windows distro.
Yeah.
Windows isn't a Linux distro, but Microsoft does have at least two pure Linux distros.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, CBL Mariner and CBL something else. I can't remember.
Yeah, I saw. There's another one that similar to Mariner. Yeah.
But okay, guys, can I run an idea by you and get your opinion?
Sure.
All right. The next release of Zero Linux will have something different, and I want to get your input on the idea. I'll be completely removing the ability to install anything with Calamares, even drivers, and I'm not going to include any drivers on the ISO. Just the Mesa driver, the basic Mesa video driver, and Pipewire. Now, is it a good idea, in your opinion, to give the option to the user to install the appropriate video driver post-install or not?
During
Why
install.
are we removing it from the installer?
Yeah, during install.
I'm using Calamares basically, but instead of adding a section where user can checkbox select the driver for their video card, I'm going to be getting rid of all that, and I'm not going to give them an option post-install. They have to figure it out. I'm thinking of giving them the option to figure things out on their own, which will help them learn the inner workings of Linux.
So at this point, why don't you just tell them to use Arch Linux?
Yes. And even Arch Linux automatically installed. You just need to know that you have NVIDIA and to install NVIDIA driver for you.
No, no, wait. Arch, using the Arch install script, that new thing that got released.
Yes.
It only allows you to install the available driver on their repository, which is currently the wrong one, 5.15. But
it works for me.
Yeah, but not for everyone. That's the point.
Right.
Yeah, he's trying to swap out.
It's Arch Linux.
He's trying.
Fix it then yourself. It's Arch Linux at the end of the day. But for you're making a distro for the users.
The idea being giving the user the complete freedom to install whatever video driver they want post-install, not during the installation, but post.
That's a bad user experience.
Why?
Yeah, what happens when they install a bad driver and reboot?
First
no,
of
it's
all,
up to them to do the research. It's up to them to do the research. I'll be posting on the forum
why
and
then
on the website. Do your research. Install the right driver.
Okay, so what is the difference then between Zero Linux and Arco?
Oh, well, they will get the reason they're getting the ISO, in my mind, is they're getting my modifications as a package instead of having to do them all on their own.
So why don't you just offer a repository that they can install things from rather than a distribution?
Yeah.
I was thinking of doing that, like DTOS, but until I figure it out, I'm just gonna, because a lot of people are going to be a bit too lazy to do all this stuff. I'm just giving them the distro as a packaged deal, and I'll tell them on the website in the future and on forum threads where they should go and read, and I'm gonna hyperlink to where they should go and read to get to figure out which driver they need for
Then
their
they
video
shouldn't be
card.
using. If they're too lazy, they shouldn't be using anything Arch based. First of all.
Probably, yeah,
Second of
probably
all,
your best bet.
I have a
is
question
No, no.
for you. I have a question for you. Are you in any way interested in user experience, in UX of your distro? If you are, then there is only one choice: keep it in the ISO, keep it in the installer, because that's what makes a good user experience. Not and forcing them to do the work on their own. That's not a good user experience. That's actually a very bad user experience. Second of all, you're an Arch-based distro, so there is certain work you'll have to do anyway, because it's Arch is broken in many cases.
Yeah.
But you should at least on install time provide them with certain amount of good user experience.
I think you have
one
to.
Of them.
I think you have to go with the default driver by default if you want to warn people. Hey, if you have a problem, go.
That's what I'm saying. Instead of worrying about and maintaining all those drivers myself, I will tell the users this ISO includes the Mesa driver, aka the Nouveau driver for NVIDIA drivers.
You could just do the Pop OS thing where they have completely different ISOs.
Yeah.
Well, no, and if you want to install the proprietary driver, it's up to you. But
that would work. Yeah, just install the open source driver. You know it's going to at least boot for everybody, and then let them install their own proprietary driver.
Right. Yeah. Well,
when was the last time a Nuevo driver actually booted for someone?
No, but by providing the Mesa driver on the ISO, it's letting them boot the system, use the system. Yeah. But the only thing they would need to do is research which actual proprietary driver they need for NVIDIA.
One question: when's the last time the Nouveau driver actually booted for someone? Because I could never get Nouveau driver to boot for anything.
Every day for me.
Every time I install Arch on a system with an NVIDIA card, I never install NVIDIA out of the box.
On my old laptop,
I always just go Nouveau and then I'll worry about it later.
On my old laptop, I just can't get Nouveau to start even. On this one, I can get it because it started 16 and it has a better.
That's why on the boot, when you boot the Zero Linux ISO, I provide a no mode set section, which allows you to, in case the default option does not work, the no mode set would work.
I'll tell you what, man. You just like on your next ISO release, just take the drivers out of the ISO, drop like documentation links in like a basic HTML file or something that the web browser automatically loads into, and then just see what happens.
Also, another thing, if you're gonna do that, first set a deprecation policy. So that means tell them when the next ISO drops, tell them in next ISO there will not be a driver.
That's what I've been doing.
Do not just out of the blue change. That's a bad
I don't do anything out of the blue. I've been telling them on social, on Telegram and on Discord. I've been telling them that in the future release there will no longer be a driver selection. Prepare yourselves to learn how to do your research to get the right drivers for your hardware.
Also post it on the website.
Yeah, of course. On the website, I recently added, when you click the download button, it will open up a end user agreement. So in the end user agreement for the next release, it will be there. No drivers will be provided on the ISO. Click here to learn how to go to a thread that's going to have a mini wiki. It's a mini wiki thread that will have all the threads and all the names of the proper drivers to install for each card and everything, and with a big caution at the bottom saying install at your own risk. I'm not going to be held responsible if you break your device.
Just on the Nouveau point, on my old laptop, I had to actually completely disable the NVIDIA card for a system to boot until NVIDIA drivers.
Or you could have set the no mode set.
No, it didn't work. I had to completely disable.
Nouveau 0 equals 0. Nouveau set 0.
I had to actually completely disable the NVIDIA card because it was crashing completely. It was crashing the system because the card I was using was a bit of a was completely unsupported by
What
Numa.
about what
So I had
Manjaro
to
does?
disable it.
You're done.
Big Pod on Manjaro, you have the screen that allows you to do free drivers or proprietary
Didn't work.
drivers. It doesn't work either.
I had to completely disable the card so I could actually boot in it until I had the actual driver, NVIDIA proprietary, correct NVIDIA proprietary installed.
Well,
Hip Dad, join
I
the
will have all the
conversation, sir.
documentation on the mini wiki on the forum. That's the whole point. But
hold on just a second.
I'll explain why. Because maintaining,
had a question.
providing all those drivers in
Time out.
will make users expect me to support every single one of them, thinking that I created them.
Right.
So if I tell them, I remove that responsibility off my shoulders, and I give them the freedom to do their own research and to learn and to install the right. Because on Windows, at the end of the day, it's the same thing. If you build a custom build that you built yourself, somebody gifted you, and you formatted the computer without knowing what you have in it, you'll have to hunt what model device you have, and then hunt for the drivers.
Windows installs them for you.
Not all the time. Not for every single device.
At least for everyone I had in.
Imagine you have a capture card that is specific to you. It's not a Gato or anything known. There are.
Hey guys. Hey, Steve. Pause. Hip Dad, join the conversation. Yeah, because that's been going on for a while. He's had his hand up forever.
Well, I'll tell you my experience back in the day. Trying to install Red Hat 3, SUSE, all different. I've tried all different flavors. I didn't find one that I absolutely loved until I run across LibreNet, and it had the best installer ever. Everything worked out of the box, and the maintainer, he passed away from cancer, and his son decided not to follow up. I believe that, and that's when Ubuntu started to get hot and heavy, and I think Ubuntu stole that installer. Because Ubuntu, I prefer not to use it, but they have the more update kernel and everything. But I used to have a friend from Portugal remote into my computer to install the NVIDIA drivers from the NVIDIA website. Because every time I tried it, I borked my system and had to start over. So not having at least the base NVIDIA drivers on your installer, I think is a mistake, because you're going to have people borking their system and they're going to blame it on Zero Linux. They're not going to blame it on the drivers or anything like that. So
what if I include... But here, think about it this way.
Well, he wants these people to learn how to install the driver. So it's just like, if they're going to blame Zero Linux, well, obviously they didn't read the damn manual. Because, Zero Linux is actually just Arch Linux in the end of the day.
Yeah, I understand that. But think about it this way. If I include X driver, and that X driver does not support Y card, like this user has the Y card, so the driver I included on the ISO will not work for them. It's going to bork their system, and they're going to blame me anyway.
Now, what Hip Dad was saying there about the little proprietary video driver tool that Ubuntu uses, that's actually a really nifty tool.
Yep.
Because you just install the open source driver, and then when they get into the system, they click a button in a little GTK app, click a button, install the NVIDIA driver, and it's done for them.
Yeah, it's
let's remember the canonical works with NVIDIA to actually get that properly.
It's called MHWD. It's a GUI front end for MHWD.
Is that the Manjaro tool?
Yeah. So it automatically detects your device and will grab the right driver for your device. But I am not a developer. I don't know how to do all that. So I'm using the means at my disposal, which is no knowledge. So if I supply this driver on the ISO, and the guy has a card that's not supported by this driver, they're gonna anyway bork their system. So to remove that whole thing off of since I'm no developer, I don't have all the hardware to test on and everything. I just throw it on the user to figure out. I just give them the links and the names of the drivers to see which to install. And of course, they're not going to install the wrong one, because the links will include what model their device falls under.
Yeah, but what about... You're predicating on the fact that user will read things.
Yes.
which
If they don't want to
generally
read things,
isn't
it's
a
not
thing.
on me. It's not on
Yeah,
me.
but
It's on them.
why not
General
drop
user
back?
experience is not that.
Why
People
not
don't
drop
want to read.
back? Yeah, drop back, and instead of going full distro, why not make a zero desktop environment so everybody on every base platform can enjoy zero desktop Linux environment? Because that's what
That's
that
that's what I would be.
would be
That's
better.
what I will be doing in the future. I'm gonna in the future. Zero Linux will only become a tool. It's gonna become something they download and they run, install and run on Arch KDE, and they can apply my tweaks to it via that way. It will no longer be a distro.
I have
threw
noticed.
the idea on social. I got negative. They said like, why don't you want to be a distro? Stay a distro, please stay a distro. So
Don't ask anything on social media. It's always going to be negative.
Yeah.
Well,
true.
I hate to change the subject that we've been talking about basically the entire time, because I think that at this point he's pretty much kind of gotten his answer, so he can. So at this point, he needs to make the decision by himself. That's how I see it, anyway. But anyways, did you guys know that Ubuntu's Mirror project got an update?
Yes. I am especially happy because that project is something that I will probably in the next couple of years.
They get updates every now and then.
Well, they are actually at a version 2.8.
Yes.
Of all versions, they actually got that far without anybody realizing it.
Do you know what Mirror is?
I don't even know what it is anymore.
It's a Wayland compiler.
I know what it used to be.
It's a Wayland compiler.
That's why it's still being worked on, is because it was actually one of the first Wayland compilers. Like it was whenever Canonical abandoned the idea of the Ubuntu Touch and all of that. Yeah,
even though it was technically better than Wayland.
Mirror was already kind of like working with Wayland, way before a lot of the other stuff was.
Mirror was
How do you spell that?
Display server.
MIR.
MIR.
Okay. Like the spaceship Mirror. Yeah.
I linked the Phoronix article in the Jitsi chat for you guys, just in case you guys didn't believe me.
But now it's a Wayland compiler, and I think Mate Desktop will probably use it for Wayland when time comes.
Eventually.
Yeah. I mean,
because getting to Wayland is a hard thing to do.
It's nice when someone makes a window manager for you.
Having to rewrite a window manager basically for Wayland is a horrible thing.
Yeah, well, that's why so few existing window managers have actually ported over to Wayland, is because it's such a massive undertaking. We've got hundreds of window managers available for Linux, and like 5 of them have actually have any kind of roadmap to actually get to Wayland.
They haven't yet become Wayland compositors.
Right. Michael, you had something you wanted to say, sir?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to interject there a minute that I think that part of our educating new Linux users is to encourage them to read a lot, because that is where the biggest fault in people trying to adopt Linux fall down, is because it's all well documented, but nobody wants to read the documents.
Problem is people don't want to read.
Have you read some of the documentation available for some of these projects?
Yes, sir.
I have.
You're rarity, my friend. I'm gonna tell you that. In the last couple of years, I have seen a lot of people. I educate a lot of people on Linux and on other things. And one thing I learned is that people don't want to read. And even if they read, they 7 out of 8 times they don't know what they read.
I mean, we have this beautiful system of documentation on Linux called man pages, and even though man pages are there, you realize most desktop Linux users have never heard of a man page. They don't even know it's even installed on their system, that they have this database of all these instruction manuals. They don't know about it.
The UX of man pages is horrible, so yeah.
I'm not saying it's great, but users don't even know it's there. Like when they need help,
that's a good thing.
They don't even know where to look for.
Well, I think my main focus here is that we can show them what to do, but we need to encourage them to try and seek out the answers and not berate them or belittle them when they go to us for help later, like if they don't understand what they read.
I mean, at the same time, the only communities that are really well known for doing that are like the communities that are pretty well known for doing that, like the Arch Linux communities.
Wow.
In my case, the Slackware community, because apparently I don't know how sudo works.
Slackware. What can we do?
Yeah, Slackware is interesting. I'm just going to put that out there. One thing I did want to mention, you talking about somebody, I think Josh mentioned it about Arco or Zero Linux eventually not being a ISO, just being a repository or something like that. That's kind of what Arco seems to be evolving into. The more and more I see the stuff Eric Dubois and their team doing with these installation scripts.
The Arch Linux tweak tool instead of Arco tweak tool.
Right. It seems like more and more they want to get away from having to deal with Calamares and all those ISOs, the 30-something ISOs.
This is the future. No, I'll explain it quite quickly.
There's too many Arch distributions.
I tend to ramble on a bit too long, like Josh said.
Ramble.
But we are modders. We are not actual distro maintainers or creators. We're modders. We mod an existing distro out there. We just add tweaks and configurations and modifications to the UI. That's it. That's all we do. We're not.
I think Arch Linux is unique. I think Arch Linux is unique in the fact that it allows people to build these installation scripts so easily.
Well, we're not helping make Linux better. We're not helping make Linux better. We're just taking something that exists, modifying them the way we like, and distributing them.
You know what's, in my opinion, the number of that should be of Arch Linux distros? 1. Arch Linux, and nothing else.
Technically, that's kind of what there is.
Big Pod, I agree. Big Pod,
No, there are actually, I can think of a couple of Arch Linux distributions that do enough different.
Yeah,
that they're not really compatible with mainline Arch. There was another one. I don't know if it's still around.
The idea that Big Pod is saying is the Arch Linux does not need to have Arco Linux, Zero Linux, and stuff like us. We're just modifying the UI, modifying the settings, and calling ourselves a distro. We're not a distro.
Technically, that is a distro. Distro is anything that distributes. Problem is that Arch shouldn't do that. It shouldn't be done with that. If you want to do that with Fedora, do that with Ubuntu. It's a lot more stable, a lot better for that kind of a thing.
Well,
yeah, but those are distributions that already.
What Eric did with ALCI specifically, adding Calamares to Arch and just installing Arch with nothing. It's like the Arch install script, but instead of being a script, it's just Calamares installer. That's it.
Yeah, it's like an Arch install, but you actually get customized desktops instead of just the vanilla.
Well, I'm not talking about that aspect. I'm just talking about instead of having a script, having a GUI instead of a script, like Calamares. And he stopped there. With ALCI. He didn't go further. That could be called a distro, but we took it to a whole other level where we started adding our own ideas of desktop environments and window managers and stuff like that. That's no longer adding. That's just tweaking.
My favorite's been like Endeavor OS because it's been very stable for me. I like it better than Vanilla Arch.
We all do. We all like a certain distro.
I like it better than Vanilla Arch. Well,
it's a server distro. It's not a.
Endeavor OS is fine, except that for the longest time, for like the first 2 or 3 years that it's been a project, I literally could never find a download button on their website.
That is true. I had to actually go take the link and put it in a note somewhere.
Yeah,
so
you have to Google download Endeavor OS and use the Google search result to find it.
Yes, yeah, it's terrible. That's terrible. But you're right.
Unfortunately, that's a problem. I would say with the majority of Linux distributions is their websites are pretty bad, and sometimes there's actually a few distributions off the top of my head I can think that really hide their ISOs. You got to go search for their ISOs, and that just shouldn't be the case.
Right.
When I go to your home page, there should be a big button that says download. Like that,
That's
because
what
that's
I
why I'm
did.
going to your webpage most of the time is to get the
That's
ISO.
what I did for Zero Linux, because you mentioned it in one of your videos. So that's what I did with Zero Linux. The download button is the first call to action button. It's right there.
Yeah. By the way, your webpage looks great.
Yeah, the Zero Linux webpage, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
The new site.
It looks
I'm
great.
post a link in the YouTube chat for those that haven't seen the new site here.
But yeah, eventually Zero Linux will become a tool like DTOS. It's this is the safest route to take. In all honesty, let the users install the distro their way, whatever. Then, if they want, they can get my tweaks in, and that's it.
Yeah. I think a lot of it too is the more base level stuff that the user has to take care of, the less you have to baby them. Like if they have to go through the trouble of actually setting up some of the base system components,
because
then they're less they're less
go
apt
with,
to come to you and need help.
Whatever decision we go with related to the system, they're gonna blame you in the end because you took the decision.
I get issues opened up on my GitLab repositories. I get people opening up issues on my GitLab repositories on some of these projects for issues that have nothing to do with any of the scripts or software or anything that I've written. You know, there's like people didn't install Arch Linux right, and I'm going to go open an issue, on DT's .files repository, about, hey, can you help me with this Arch Linux problem? I was like,
no,
I could, but I'd rather not. It's like, can you go to a more appropriate place to ask this question, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to be mean, but at the same time, there are people that are actually using some of my GitLab stuff that do need help. So when people ask stuff that's not even remotely related, I have to prioritize.
Oh boy. While talking to you guys, I have built over 7 packages and pushed to my repositories from the AUR, including Karamaris got updated.
Yeah,
Whoa.
I'm about to do a big update on my repositories, probably on video tomorrow, for a lot of the DTOS stuff.
You guys know that Calamaris is just an installer, right? Like, you don't actually have to keep Calamaris as up to date as you think you do.
Yes.
Well,
yes, we're aware of that.
No. Yes and no, because recently Calamaris started crashing at the final step when they chose ButterFS and swap file, so it had to be fixed. So a new update needed to be pushed, but otherwise, you don't need to update. You can stick to whatever works.
I do love that they added that option about the swap partition, the swap file, the no swap, because I always hated with the automatic partitioning tools that they always would automatically create a swap, or sometimes I don't want one. Like on my workstation at my office, I've got 64 gigs of RAM. Yeah. I really don't want to swap. I don't need it. I've never used a swap for anything on that machine.
You should have one.
For what?
Because if you fill up your RAM, your system will crash.
64 gigs?
How is he going to fill up
Still.
64 gigs of RAM?
If
I fill up 64 gigs, I really did something.
When I put my system, I have 12 gigs of RAM full. When I start Microsoft Edge, 20 gigs are gone. We got to have that many
tabs.
My question would be, BT, why did you run Windows to fill up your RAM?
Yeah, well, actually, was it Michael that mentioned Blender before?
Yes, sir.
I can get Blender to take up half that RAM if I want to.
That's easy.
But 64 gigs, that's a lot of RAM.
I've got a Blender to use 258 gigs of memory, which backs up my system memory, as well as use 120 gigs of my swap space too.
Well, what you were doing.
It was a massive file. It took like 40 minutes to open that one on a RAID 1 array.
My system, my 64 gigs actually crashed because of RAM one day. Because
when I render video in Kdenlive on my Office machine with that 64 gigs of RAM, Kdenlive will actually use up 16 or 18 gigs of that RAM. Like Kdenlive will suck up some RAM if you give it enough RAM to use.
Yeah.
Yeah. A big kind of hilarious thought just popped into my head. Like, basically, the only reason people use Windows these days is just for it to eat up their RAM.
Not
And
even.
I'm
System
Not
systems in general.
People use Windows because that's what they know.
Well, they came with their computer.
That
I mean,
too.
that's not what they know. It's what's there.
Hey,
Or they just don't want to deal with Linux.
agreed.
But I don't blame them. If they just don't want to deal with it, that's fine.
You can still be
Okay.
open source and use Windows. You can still use
My
open
turn.
source.
My turn to do what Josh did, change the subject. And I do apologize. But what do you think about Ubuntu switching to Pipewire by default?
That's
And the
fine.
wrong way at that.
What do you mean by the wrong way?
They're using pipe media session instead of wire plumber.
What's wrong with that?
It's broken.
It's not.
It is.
Well, the thing with Ubuntu switching, I mean, they're switching in 21.10, which that's one of their interim releases. Nobody really uses those. I mean, they're kind of almost like a testing ground for the next LTS.
Yeah, but which means they're gonna include Pipewire in the next release.
Well, they've also
Not
got like
necessary.
5 months to even figure this out. So they're
not necessary, yeah. Because
my guess, Pipewire will come in 20. It might come in 20 to 10, but not because of Pipewire itself, because they want to use it for another project. That is
and the thing about the way Ubuntu does on those interim releases, when they introduce this stuff, if it doesn't work out, then they'll try something different. I mean, that's the point of the interim releases is you see if the stuff will work before you get to the LTS.
Yeah,
you don't want to try it out in an LTS
Right. My bet would be 2304 for Pipewire, like to be there for a normal desktop.
Well, it's the default on Zero Linux, by the way.
Well, I mean, Pipewire is the default
with wire plumber
on a lot of distributions now.
Yeah,
I think the only major distribution at this point that's just absolutely refusing to enable Pipewire is probably like Debian.
Debian, of course.
Yeah, because
because they're still on an old. I mean, the next version of Debian stable won't come out probably for another year or two.
Yeah,
Ubuntu Mate has Pipewire.
Ubuntu Mate has Pipewire, yes, until you go to enable it and then crash your entire system.
Well, I have it enabled.
It's working for me. I mean, I've got Pipewire up here on Synaptic, and it's got Pipewire and it doesn't have wire
or media session.
Apparently, something's working great nowadays. Apparently, something's great nowadays because I did a day after LTS release.
Well, I had it before LTS release enabled as soon as Martin put it in there.
Yeah, it works good. It works good.
Well, then apparently I did something wrong.
Definitely.
Actually, it doesn't work good. It works okay because I have to constantly flip between my headset and my external speakers whenever I want to switch to one to the other. I have to flip. Like if I'm in my external speakers, they're highlighted. It's not working, and I have to flip to my headset and then flip back.
Are you sure you're using Pipewire, not Pulsewire?
Well, it says Pipewire and Synaptic.
Yes.
It
is installed. But it's not enabled by default because it is installed because of Flatpak. And if only Flatpaks use it by default.
Just run inksy-a, capital A. Inksy-capital A, it will tell you which one is active.
But
Pipewire works whenever I plug in my headset, it automatically switches. So for me, it works. It's a desktop, so I don't know, maybe.
What's that command line again?
Inksy, INXI, space dash capital A. It will tell you which one is active.
Oh, it tells you like your active devices too and everything.
Yeah, neat little tool.
I didn't know about that.
I'm old. Give me the rest of it. I got INXI.
Space dash A.
Capital A.
Or capital A.
Capital A, yeah. Inksy is a package on the AUR, by the way.
Well, it's using PulseWire it's using Pulse, ALSA, and Pipewire are all running.
So, which means it's using Pulse.
Which using Pulse, yeah.
And Discord uses Flatpak, so it's probably using Pipewire.
It's using Pipewire. Yeah, if
Yeah.
it's a
Yes.
flat pack, it should be.
I
Okay.
think. Yeah, for some
can-
stuff it's enabled, but I'm not sure how it works.
The Discord Flatpak still uses Pulse audio.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
It's enabled for the Pulse, for Pipewire to actually to sound through come to anything on your system from
Yeah.
Flatpaks. So for
Now, I haven't played with Pipewire because I've just been happy with Pulse. No, I'm just kidding. You guys know I hate Pulse. But what is the deal with audio? Because is that like the most difficult thing to get right on an operating system? Because that is the thing that just has been a headache since the beginning of time. It's like audio.
even
is-
on Windows.
Even
Windows
on
audio is
Windows,
great.
literally
Windows audio is great.
yes, compared to Linux audio.
Well, if you're doing a
And-
comparison, I
Yeah,
guess.
but-
Realistically, the operating system with hands down the best stable audio stack right now is actually Mac OS.
Yeah.
And
No,
the-
actually, we
Yeah.
disagree. A lot of people have trouble with audio stack on Mac.
No.
Ubuntu
I have a Mac.
Studio
I would
used to
have
be
issues
good.
with audio on Mac.
Yeah,
Yeah, Ubuntu Studio used to be good because of it came with a lot of the Jack stuff.
I mean, it still comes with a lot of Jack stuff, and
Wh-
a lot of the Jack tools you can use directly with Pipewire too.
I never did understand Jack. You know,
Nobody
I just
Jack
never
is very
delved into it.
Jack is very confusing. I've actually played with Jack a little bit. I've
Jack
actually
is
recorded
more for
videos before.
professionals, basically, to it allows you more granularity to connect, to interconnect devices. But it's for media studios,
That's it.
basically,
That's
not
it.
for regular users.
The problem is once you have a lot of input devices,
Yeah,
it is so confusing getting all the inputs.
yeah,
and
because you have to
outputs
reroute them
synced.
manually for now.
Oh, it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
But when you have it right, it does work.
Yep.
Yeah,
When you have it right,
Yeah.
unlike Pulse Audio, where you never know if it's going to work or not. You just every day's a new day.
No, but Pulse audio nowadays is more like inclined to is more for older devices, legacy devices, more than more recent devices.
Right.
At least that's the way I
need
see
to
it.
test Pipewire with my work laptop because audio on Linux on that device doesn't work.
It depends. Different configs require different packages. That's as simple as that.
But then again, that thing doesn't actually work. Even the driver isn't even detected because it is too new for Linux to even care about. It uses some new audio stack or something bullshitty like that. And I know the fix, but that fix doesn't work, even though it does run on an exact same audio card on another system.
Well, I will say the audio surprisingly works really well in this Jitsi Electron app.
Yeah.
Yes.
'Cause
yeah.
I've really been impressed with Jitsi here lately. Like, I just
Oh,
See,
I am too.
If you hadn't told me about it, I wouldn't have discovered it.
yeah, I just grabbed the latest app image for I think it was April 28th, the last time they pushed a release just a month ago. So I grabbed the latest one and had no problems. It just
Is that the
and it sounds
client or
good.
the server?
The client.
Yeah, this is the client,
Oh wow.
Yeah.
the desktop client. Yeah.
Realistically,
And of course,
all the
Firefox.
Jitsi server really does, and if you set it up for this, is all it does is it tells everybody where the meeting is going to be, and it gets us all connected. The majority of the work is actually done through your web browser,
Right.
Yeah.
which
Well,
in
that's-
this case it's an Electron application, so
Right,
it's working
it's
off
Chromium.
Chromium. Yeah,
Yep.
And a lot of people, I made that video a couple of weeks ago, my top 7 Electron apps.
Yes, sir.
And people were like, well, you got to be trolling. You can't possibly like Electron. That's like, well, Jitsi is good. I mean, there were several there that I use on a daily basis. My email client, Mailspring, it works. It's not slow or buggy or anything. People, I know people have this hate toward Electron, and they don't want desktop applications written in JavaScript, yada yada yada.
to be fair, some of their arguments are actually quite justified.
I mean, the Atom text editor is
Yeah.
a horrible Electron app. Like, it's slow, it's buggy. Like, I get there's some bad ones out there, But when there's some good ones out there, I tell people about them. Stacer. Well, Stacer is no longer an Electron app. I mentioned that on the video, that it was an Electron app. They actually, a couple of years ago, ported over to Qt.
Oh, nifty.
So they switched from Electron to Qt, but it looks almost exactly the same. I would have never guessed they actually made the switch until somebody in the comments mentioned, oh, no, they're using a Qt now. Oh, okay.
They have Jitsi in a deb file too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it should be packaged in a lot of repositories. I just use the app image because it's what I've always gone and grabbed. And the Jitsi guys package the app image. So kind of like I talked about OBS and the Flatpak, it's like an official package. Jitsi, they package the app image, so it'd be a good one to get because I know somebody knew what they were doing.
Yeah, if you can find like an official app image, that's like the best version of a package you can get.
Kind of like when I had to reinstall my Nextcloud server the other day. I did a reinstall, went to the latest Ubuntu server LTS, and the Nextcloud installation recommends snaps, so I always do a sudo snap install Nextcloud. Just for Big Pod.
Speaking of the snap package of Nextcloud, it broke on me 2 or 3 days ago. So I killed it, and I just went to regular storage drive. I killed all instances of Nextcloud, especially on Arch. The package,
the rolling nature probably of it is messing you up.
Although I had the snap package on Arch installed, but for some reason this package on Arch is not very maintained and very. It's broken, so
yeah. I wouldn't want to run a Nextcloud server on Arch.
Yes, why run Arch server? Yeah, and I have done that, and it's not a good idea.
I've done some web servers before on Arch, and because you're getting updates to everything all the time, PHP and Nginx, and everything's updated, and things break.
If I'm going to run Arch Linux as a server, I just run everything in a Docker container.
I do that on Ubuntu. Briti, you mentioned app images. I got what's his name? I got blocked on Twitter by the creator of app images.
Right.
Because I told him that he has the wrong idea. Because he was angry at Ubuntu for not shipping the right version of libfuse.
Oh, app image on the latest, yeah.
You know what? That's you need to use libfuse 2. And Ubuntu by default ships libfuse 3 because libfuse 2 is essentially
end of life.
Is end of life, deprecated, only gets occasional updates because of essentially app image.
And here's the thing: I've had other people mention this to me about, hey, DT, what's your thoughts about Ubuntu, the new LTS? It breaks app images. And it's like they didn't break app images. It's just app image.
Sudo apt install libfuse 2.
App image needs to fix this problem. Like they can't keep using old libraries that are end of life. You've got to eventually move on to modern technology.
Since we're speaking about app images, App Image Launcher just got an update.
Oh, okay.
So and what I just pushed it to my repo. So
what he said that Ubuntu should ship with libfuse 2 because app image will be with libfuse 2 until every distro stops shipping libfuse 2, which is like so you're gonna be you're saying you need to ship libfuse 2 so we don't have to switch to libfuse 3.
Rel 9 just released. They're still shipping libfuse 2. So does that mean that we're gonna have every distro continuing to maintain libfuse 2 for the next 10 years?
Essentially, yes.
We had this problem with Python where Python 2's been dead for a decade and people still write Python 2 applications, and it just drives me nuts.
Yeah. Not too long ago.
Not too long ago, but yes, take a shot this morning.
She didn't
did you?
I didn't hear her say anything.
Okay, we've got some weird background noises. I don't know if that was Stefan or Brandon or both. There's a lot going on there.
I should be muted.
Oh, you were muted? Okay, then I guess it wasn't you. All right.
I try to take care to not make noises. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah, Arch Penguin in the chat. Arch Penguin says he just uses Debian for servers. I respect that decision.
I use Ubuntu.
I do too.
It's more secure.
I do too.
Don't use Debian. It's less secure.
My web server still runs Gen 2 because that hasn't broke yet.
Yeah, don't use Gen 2 for a server.
Yes.
I even
Use
took the time to
Ubuntu,
set up
use-
Secure Boot and SE Linux on Gen 2. That was a pain in the butt.
And they say
Gen 2 is a pain in the butt altogether. So whatever on Gen 2 is a pain in the butt by extension.
SE Linux is a pain in the butt altogether. Why use it? AppArmor is better.
Well, SE Linux, when somebody mentions SE Linux, that reminds me of the days of rooting an Android device because we had to set SE Linux to permissive.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is SE Linux? Okay, whatever. Set to permissive.
Yeah, set it to permissive instead of fixing the actual issue with SE Linux.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that's what got me into Linux indirectly, by using Android.
Really?
Yeah, indirectly, Android got me to learn stuff about kernels, what a kernel is, and the sudo command, and what is sudo. And
Something
stuff
about
like that.
looking up the directions on how to root like the Nexus 5 and seeing that's just a one-line command in Linux compared to like the 500,000 you have to use for Windows.
Yeah. I had to install Linux. I had to install Linux on a virtual machine to deal with my Android. And I used to maintain a ROM, and you build a ROM on Ubuntu.
I rooted one phone and found out there is no real benefit to it, and just
exactly.
never did it
I
again.
did it on the Nexus. I did it on the Nexus 6.
I did it on my own old Sony, and I figured out there's no real benefit to it, so I just never did it again.
No real benefit except to have more services running in the background and making it slower. And
some people just like playing with stuff. I mean, sometimes you just do it to do it. Right.
Heck, I used to run a jailbreaking website and a podcast called iGeekstas, IG33KSDAS, but I wasn't doing it. I wasn't really into it anyway, so I gave it up. And yesterday, or a week ago, I received an email from Apple telling us, "Oh, your iGeekstas podcast is now accepted to be on Apple Podcasts." I was like, "We discontinued that like 15 years ago." I'm like, "Wow, Apple works so fast."
No.
No.
Apple.
It took them 15 years to accept us to be on the Apple Podcast. Thank you.
Yeah.
Apple has some real problems.
And
I would know. I work for them.
One of the things with podcasting is there's such a monopoly with podcasting. I like you have to be on Apple. You have to be on Google.
You have to be everywhere.
You have to be on Spotify, and that's about it. Like those three. Like if you're on that, you've got everything covered.
Yeah.
Like look at the Linux Cast, for example. Matt from the Linux Cast. He's got a podcast. He puts it one place. That one place distributes it all the rest of the places.
It's not, years ago though. It was much more decentralized.
Well,
like you had podcasts all over the place, and now it seems like
podcasts are actually really
everyone's
easy
tied
to
to just a couple of
platforms.
companies.
Podcasts are really easy to get on multiple platforms because all you do is you just give for getting your podcast on iTunes. You just give them the RSS feed.
Yes.
And then to get them, I think Spotify is like the only one or Spotify and YouTube are like the only ones where you actually have to upload anything, and the rest of them you just sync off the RSS feed, and then you just upload to one source of truth, and that's all you need.
Yeah, you upload to one source, and that source will distribute to the rest of the other sources.
Yeah.
So yeah, I used to have a podcast, but I'm thinking of having a new one for Linux, but I wouldn't know what to talk about. So I'm still working on that.
I was thinking of making one about rockets, but
Yeah, there you go. The Rockets podcast.
well, I was planning to do Linux and rockets.
Well, you could just do podcasts where you break all Big Paw's nice things.
Well, now I'm taking a long break while I reevaluate things until Christmas. The next release won't be until Christmas, so I have enough time to reevaluate everything and see how to go from there. The last release will be Christmas, and then after that, it might convert to a tool, being a tool rather than a distro, because a distro has too many things attached to it, which I can no longer do and handle. So yeah,
I'm thinking about the same thing with DTOS. Is I've been playing around with building these GTK apps, just building some graphical applications. You can install these GTK apps, and you can click some buttons and grab my config files, or I'll package some binaries or whatever, and just be done with it. And I'm not fooling with Calamaris.
Since I'm not a developer, I'm just gonna be using YAD.
Yeah. Well, you've got people in your community. I would bet if you just put out a call, somebody knows a little Python and GTK. They can create something for you just like that for some simple applications.
Speaking of which, one last mention. Vladimir, a developer from CashieOS, was gracious enough to accept my call to create a post-install app. Like, you remember how Calamaris used to have a section where you could select the Jitsi and Discord and what have you.
Yeah, I like that.
I moved that to post-install to a separate app. He developed a complete app for Zero Linux called PIAI, Post-Installation Application Installer. He built it, and now I moved that package selection to this standalone app. And what's the benefit of that? In Calamaris, you don't have package descriptions. You have the package name, but no description. You cannot add it manually. So in this one, it pulls the description from Pacman.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, and he developed this app for Zero Linux, and he's using it now for CashieOS. But the actual app, the original app, was made by MX Linux. Remember MX Linux application installer? It was forked from there for Arch, but made 10 times better.
Very nice.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, the idea of becoming a tool rather than a distro is high up on the list. The last ISO distro-wise for Zero Linux will be in December. That's it. After that, it's a tool.
Yeah, how about that? That makes
with
total
buttons,
sense.
basically like a GTK app with buttons. Click here to apply the rise. Click here to apply the tweaks. Click here to add inject my repositories. Click here to do this.
Because I was thinking about doing something very similar. It'd just be an app that you check some
boxes. It removes
boxes.
all the responsibility of having to maintain a complete distro.
Yeah.
Last time I wrote a GUI was so long ago. Everything I now write is a web UI.
Big Pod, you know enough JavaScript. I think you could whip up something for us.
I've actually been using it for around 10 years. JavaScript.
JavaScript?
Yeah.
Why people still use JavaScript? I don't know.
Because a lot of people hire people that know JavaScript.
Yes,
but hey,
I mean there's a lot of jobs.
Secure janky mess.
On Mac OS, Jitsi is Java.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it doesn't even run. It doesn't even run post 10.5.
I'm really a big fan of like Rust and Haskell and those upcoming languages as well. I see them replacing JavaScript eventually, but not right now.
They won't replace
Rust is
JavaScript.
on the way. Rust is
what
on the
will
rise.
replace JavaScript is called WebAssembly. This is what everything will compile to for web.
That makes sense because Rust has even got a path to compile from them to WebAssembly.
Yeah, that's what
JavaScript is never going away. There's been too much code out there that's actually being used.
It's gonna go away because people will want it to go away because it will be a security nightmare.
Yeah.
It is
so
a
it's
security
like Java.
nightmare.
It's going to stay around forever, just like Java.
Like COBOL, like Fortran. Like there'll still be people out there.
You know why Java stays around? Because people haven't yet stopped all the starting of Java virtual machines.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Or go Visual Basic like Linux FX.
That was crazy. When I opened up that line and it was user bin env GBR3, I was like, what in the hell language is GBR3? I've been around the block. I have never heard of GBR3. I was like, it's a Visual Basic clone. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, who chooses to script in Visual Basic on a Linux distribution?
Who chose to script in Visual Basic?
Yeah, on Windows, maybe, but on a Linux
Even on
distribution.
Windows, that thing is horrible. I don't know who.
Maybe it's just that's what they knew.
Bash and Python are already installed on every Linux system.
Well, you know,
Like you would choose those before you.
we've already written this distribution off as basically just nothing more than just a quick money grab, since they're billing you for it.
Security posture is bad.
But the security is horrible and all that. So it's just like, are they going to take the time to learn Bash?
It's unfair for us to judge, though. I think here's what we should do for the next chat with patrons next month. We all show up with our own Visual Basic script. Just create something simple and see how you got along with it.
No, I know how along I get with Visual Basic. Not gonna happen.
Like for example, DT mentioned the numbers at the bottom of the website that say 10 million users, whatever, satisfied, whatever.
Right.
Ebuzz went through the distro before, and he was like, I downloaded it, I paid for it, but the number did not change. So this is just a random number. Just this is a template, a web template being used with a random number that they never bothered to change.
Yes, standard.
So
million sounds it's a round number. That sounds nice.
It's not a round number. It's just a template. It will always stick to that number, no matter how many people.
Well, they didn't. They just wrote a number, a million, because it is a nice round number that sounds great.
Well, there were
simple
actually 21,116 users in the database, but 21,116 rounds up to 1 million. Let's be fair.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, guys.
It's a way to get you to download the distro.
Yeah, it's a marketing.
We had somebody with their hand up. Hip Dad, that's you.
Hip Dad.
Yeah. Does any of you remember Lindows?
Yes, I do.
No,
I used it.
I actually bought it back then, and I was like, let's try
back
it.
Then it was a Windows XP clone.
Yeah, and it was horrendous.
Yeah,
it wasn't good. I
it
checked it out a couple of times. Yeah.
Well, it was probably one of your first download content based type of a situation where you could get the OS, but then if you wanted to be able to do certain things, you had to buy more content.
Yeah.
Microtransactions, yay!
Candy Crush, right? Make it real Windows like.
I'll write my program in Perl, okay?
Hey,
no, it's got to be this GBR3 thing.
Oh, okay.
Because it's in the AUR apparently. So
I would rather write COBOL, and I think COBOL is absolutely weird.
well,
Actually,
you might as well go Fortran. I mean,
Yeah, might as well.
Fortran is better.
Make it. The program will say with like a output, a line out that says, "I will not program in Visual Basic."
Visual Basic. That's
100
all it is.
times.
Now, to be fair, Big Pod, if you did learn Fortran, you could probably find a job in the rocket industry.
Yep.
Yeah. Even though mostly they use C nowadays, but you know what language we should all try? Intercal. Probably none of you heard.
I don't even know what.
Michael, you know it. Try Intercal.
We're not suicidal.
Well,
you have to ask it to run certain lines, but not all.
That's right.
There was a point in time where, like, I legitimately asked a Java developer, like a guy that develops Java, the language, and I asked him why I have to call public static void main just to print hello world in their programming language. I never expected the answer that he gave me.
And
What
that
did he give you?
Because he hates me.
But still, Intercal is the most amazing language ever. It was made to be the slowest, the shittiest language ever created.
Oh, that's a plug for it right there.
Yeah, I was about to say it's got some contenders.
And
there's some others
there was an implementation of Intercal that was maintained by Eric S. Raymond.
course there is.
Ah, of course.
Created in 1990.
Well, let's take a minute and get a last word from everybody since we're coming up on the end of the 2 hours here. So, Big Pod, do you have anything to say that's, I don't know, inspirational? Leave us with something good.
I'm gonna say this again. Open source doesn't mean secure. It just means it's open source. Not really inspirational, but something to remember, because in security of supply chain, that's first rule you should remember.
Thanks for the tip. All right. Fellow Jitzer, or Steve at Zero Linux.
All right. I just need to thank three people that helped me a lot with the latest release of Zero Linux. I just need to thank the Big Monkey and Super Idea Hyperactive Kid, Gamer King, Ripley, and Alan for helping me with the latest release. As for the last word, simple. Please have the patience to read if you want to use Linux, because without reading, you're gonna get nowhere.
Yeah.
That's
it.
it.
Appreciate that. All right, thanks, Steve. Hip Dad, give us a last word, sir.
Doesn't matter what operating system you use, they all suck. And the only way to screw up a operating system is it's by your own hands.
The same can be said for sound servers. They all suck.
Yep.
Josh, give us a last word.
So, I have rejected Gen 2 out of my life. So thankfully I don't have to deal with that mess anymore. But anyways, guys, just remember that at the end of the day, Java was supposed to be the language that took over the world.
But it didn't.
Thankfully.
No, I mean that was made up back then. As long as C was around, I mean.
You know that if Microsoft actually did start using Java, that would be the case.
That's true.
Thankfully, Sun got a bee in their bonnet, and Microsoft created C#.
Yeah, I thought Solaris was going to take over the world.
Yeah.
I thought the Red Hat was going to take over the world.
No thanks.
Red Hat was never going to take over the world. They'll just take over Linux.
Even that.
No Michael, save us from this madness. Please give us a last word.
Well, I first of all wanted to just tell you guys that I am auditioning or test flying my new audio setup. This is a 2i2 Focusrite, and it's the studio setup, so it's got that microphone that goes with it. Headphones are different because I don't like the ones that come with the setup. But these are DT, as in yourself, DT990s that are barrier dynamic. And I like those a lot. And I just wanted to make sure that everything was working as I just launched my channel. And DT, you are to thank for that inspiration.
Oh, great. What's the channel?
The channel is called Caffeinated Technology.
Post a link in the Jitsi chat, and I will post it to the YouTube chat.
Okay, I will do it.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. Commander Angry, I don't know if they're there or not, but if they have a working microphone, give us a last word.
It actually fucking works. Today it actually works.
It is working. Loud and clear.
Yes. Yes. So unfortunately, I don't have anything inspirational. What I got out of today was Josh is a fucking troll. That was what I got out of today.
He is.
So, okay, cool. So now I know. Yeah, interesting discussion as always.
Well, thanks for hanging out with us. Stefan, would you like to share some wise words?
Well, I don't know if my words are wise, but yeah, I agree on Hip that basically, yeah, there is no good and no perfect system. And I'm still curious if Josh is doing anything besides continuously compiling Gen 2 packages and Gen 2 builds, or if it just has so much hardware that...
I've got 23 devices I need to deploy Ubuntu on. Hopefully Big Pod's going to be here to help me with this. because every time I try to get Ubuntu to boot on like my home lab, it refuses to boot.
Really?
Yes.
So
Yeah,
I'm
you have-
looking
you have
forward
too many
for that
problems
to
with
happen.
hardware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So aside from that, appreciate listening to you guys and your discussions, and and if I just may add one last thing that I've thought about a little bit in the past, is that I have not been exposed to Linux as a more or less tech savvy young person at the age of 13, 14, 15 whatsoever. So I try to look into my peers and their kids and nieces, nephews, whomever, who's tech savvy, and just gave them a USB stick and said, hey, come on, you can do this. Let's go.
That would make a great gift, or like for birthdays or for Christmas. Just give kids USB sticks with Linux on it.
Yeah, I agree on that, because I think that could be good for like tech savvy young people to do something good for
Make
them.
sure you put an auto run on there that makes it start the Linux installer when they insert it in the computer.
Yeah, warn them about hitting the install button.
Yep.
Before you might want to think about that.
Don't even warn them. Just let them watch what happens.
Hey, if it happens, it happens, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you have to erase a disk once or twice sometimes
Right.
to learn
If
it.
you don't accidentally format a drive, then you're not a real computer user.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
I've
agree
spelled
on
the
that.
DD command backwards before, and I lost like the tax documents I needed to file later that day.
It happens. Well, let me get my last word in. Of course, I want to thank you guys for hanging out on camera. We also had a couple of people that were on camera earlier that dropped off. So thank you guys for being here. I want to thank some of the patrons that could not be here as well. So I'm going to show some names on the screen. All these guys here. These great ladies and gentlemen that help support what I do. And other than that, guys, why don't we wave bye to YouTube?
Cheers.
Bye. JavaScript.
Python.